My daughter formed a relationship with my mother, who I've been no contact with for over 30 years when she became an adult, a young adult. And one of the reasons I think that she ended up in a relationship with my mother, outside of what she did tell me, which is that she wanted to connect to my grandmother, who she had very fond memories of, was because of the fact that my daughter had my mother in her life until she was around 6 years old. And even though my daughter, even at that age, recognized there was something not quite right, like she's told me now, and she's 40 years old, she's told me now how she did feel like guilty because my mother treated her with such favoritism over my son, her younger brother. And she noticed that. She noticed the way my mother was treating me and didn't understand it and found it confusing. So she has shared that with me. And it is one of the reasons that I ended up going no contact with my mother, seeing the way that she was dividing my children, and also because of the fact that she was trying to create division between myself and my children, particularly my daughter. She was telling her things like, shh, don't tell mommy. And I'm not talking about, giving her a little sweet or something behind my back. Nobody should be telling children, don't tell mommy. But my mother-in-law used to, go shh and sneak my daughter dessert. And we all knew. And my daughter knew we knew. And it was kind of just cute, right? And no damage has been done by that because there was no maliciousness behind it. It wasn't meant to do any harm, and it didn't. Would I encourage anything that looks like that today? Probably not. But again, I'm not in any way upset about that. It's actually a fond memory for my daughter. This is my youngest daughter in particular. And we laugh about it. It was cute. But with my mother, she was doing that in a completely different context. She was doing that to hide the fact that she was exposing my daughter to movies that were meant for adults, like Poltergeist and Dirty Dancing. I mean, she was a little girl. I didn't want her exposed to those things. And I was very specific about that. Anyway, eventually it all broke down. My mother wouldn't come to the table. She wouldn't go to therapy. She wouldn't respect my boundaries. And I had to make a decision that, as it turned out, has lasted for over 30 years with a couple of slips in between there. My daughter ends up in a relationship with her. And I know that there's some sibling survivors out there that are like really on pins and needles because maybe that's happening to them and they're worried and all that sort of thing. Please don't worry. If you know your children and you know that they're adults and you raise them to be capable people, you have nothing to worry about. Just let it be. Don't get in the middle of it. I didn't. That's my advice to you from my experience. I didn't get in the middle. I did ask my daughter to respect one boundary, and that is I didn't want my life shared with my mother and vice versa. And my daughter respected that boundary. I let her know if she needed to talk about something with regard to my mother, she could. And that's where we left it. And I'm learning quite a bit now. Like, I'm learning some things that my mother told my daughter and insinuated about me that my daughter didn't buy into at the time and certainly wouldn't buy into now. Because I raised her and she knew who I was. That doesn't mean I was perfect. It doesn't mean I didn't do bad things sometimes or make mistakes and all of that. But she knew me at my core, and she knew that I was a loving person and that my mother had tried to break me. So anyway, as I'm sharing this, I'll put it in my daughter's words. This is something that she shared on Facebook a year ago, something that I purchased for her because I wanted to replace an item that my mother stole from her. In the post, she says a family member. The family member is my mother. And again, I have complete permission to post this. I would never post something or repost something with respect to my children without their permission. A few months ago, I mentioned to my mom how upset I was that my baby name bracelet and charm bracelet, which we'd kept safe and secure up until a few years ago, was misplaced, quote unquote, by another family member when I left them in her care to have links added, with the hope that I could wear them again. These items were incredibly special to me, and to no longer have these heirlooms to someday pass on to my granddaughters or daughter if I ever have one, hit me right in the heart and not in a good way. Remember that song, It's My Party and I'll Cry If I Want to? It's my birthday tomorrow and I'm having myself a happy, loved cry at this incredibly special, thoughtful gift from my mom. A new name bracelet, complete with a peridot charm, which is my birthday. Not long after this, and there were a few other things that occurred as well, my daughter went no contact with my mother because she realized that my mother wasn't a healthy person. And as a little side note, my mother then tried to gain access to my grandchildren, who she's seen a handful of times, through my daughter's ex-husband. Yeah, that didn't work out either. And now my grandchildren are teenagers and they know what my mother is all about, and they will never have any contact with her. And that is their decision.